Welcome back. As promised, with all the games now done, now I have time for a News of the Day video. It's News of the Evening more than News of the Day, though. I could have set mood lighting. Oh well, next time. So Marc-Andre Fleury with the win tonight. He does pass Patrick Roy. He's now number 2 on the wins list with 552, and he did it in style with a shutout. And all the best to Marc-Andre Fleury. Clearly, he's winding down his career. We don't know how many more years he'll play. He's not going to catch Marty Bedard. We know this, but number 2 on the all-time wins list means absolutely you're Hall of Fame bound. And then you look at the Stanley Cup wins, Stanley Cup appearances. He's a Hall of Fame goaltender. Bill Guerin with Minnesota Wild News as well, saying he's not throwing in the towel. It's halfway through the season. He feels like Minnesota's still in the hunt. They still have good reason to think they can make it. Now, if you watch the game between them and the Islanders tonight, you might be sharing some of his optimism, or you might be a Wild fan who's shaking their head and saying he's delusional, one way or the other, right? But Bill Guerin believes that the Minnesota Wild are still in the running, and there's still a good chance of them making it into the playoffs. It's not going to be easy. The West is going to be a dogfight, I think, right up until the finish this year. Jacob Markstrom, I wanted to talk about this because it feels like there's been all of a sudden a lot of talk about Markstrom, that the Flames could trade Markstrom. And it's possible. It is possible he gets moved, but it's not easy. First off, he has a no-movement clause. The no-movement clause means if he says, I don't want to get traded, he's not getting traded. And there's no way around it. There's no, 5-team list he can submit of where he would or wouldn't go. He just has a no-movement clause. Also, his contract runs through 2026. It's been harder to move contracts that have term. That may change with the salary cap going up this summer. But what we've seen in previous seasons, if you've got years left on your contract, it's hard to get moved. And he also turns 34 on the 31st of January. So even though goaltenders can still be in their prime later on, I would think there are some teams who might look at that and want to look for maybe a younger option. I totally get why Calgary would look to make this move. Dan Vladar is a good goaltender. He's still in his prime, obviously. He's still in his 20s. And you have Dustin Wolf. Wolf looks like he's ready for NHL games. He's ready to play. And if you move Markstrom, and if you don't have to take a bunch of money back, you have a lot of cap space next summer too. But again, with Calgary, that would mean kind of throwing in the towel on a playoff chase. And I don't think they're going to be willing to do that either. There are very few teams in the West that you can look at right now and say, well, they're not going to make it, so they'll throw in the towel. Obviously, you have San Jose, you have Anaheim as two really obvious ones. Outside of that, you have Chicago. And then, who knows? Almost anything can happen from there. So does Markstrom get moved? We'll see. Obviously, the goaltending market right now feels like it's really a hot market because there's a lot of injured goaltenders, but we shall see. Valeri Nichushkin, I hope all is well with him. I've also seen a lot of comments online about Nichushkin and all this, but he has entered the NHLPA Players Assistance Program. I haven't seen why, and it's not really important why, because A, it's not really our business why, and B, it is there to get a player better. It is there to take whatever is bothering them in that moment, whatever is preventing them from feeling like they can go out there and do their job on the ice, and fix that. So all the best to Nichushkin as he tries to get everything in order. It will be a challenge now for the Avalanche to overcome the loss of Nichushkin, a team that's already without Landeskog, of course. They did have that loss tonight against Montreal. I don't think that's why. I don't think if Nichushkin's there that he necessarily helps them win that game against Montreal. I think Montreal was just, they were due. But, Nichushkin, all the best to him, and hopefully he's not gone for that long, although it did say in the post that it's indefinite, which makes some sense. If you're going in for some kind of therapy, you don't really necessarily know how long that's going to last. Good news for Hawks fans, Connor Bedard has been seen on the ice. He was on the ice today skating after practice. So, with it being a broken jaw and a 6 to 8 week timeline, the question then becomes one of, if he wears the full cage, right, at what point could he potentially end up actually coming back? And I only say this because star players are very often quite anxious to get back onto the ice and into games, and don't necessarily take the amount of time off that maybe they should. So would I be surprised if we see Bedard back before that 6 to 8 week timeline? I really wouldn't necessarily be that surprised. But hopefully he comes back when he's ready and not before that. The good thing about this is, of course, Chicago's nowhere near a playoff spot, so it's not like he feels the pressure to come back to help from that perspective. Now, into 3 stars of the week. First star this week, Pettersson of the Canucks, 4 games, 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points for Pettersson. Coleman, second star of the week from the Flames, of course, in 3 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points for Blake Coleman. And Georgiev of the Avs had 3 wins last week. 1 shutout in those 3 wins as well, so kudos to them for their 3-star selections. It was a big week for Pettersson. He had a good game today, too, against Columbus. And Vancouver now coming home off that really long road trip, and we'll see how they do when they get back home. The PWHL will be taking part in the All-Star festivities in Toronto on February the 1st. There will be a 3-on-3 showcase featuring PWHL stars who were unveiled today as well. So that will take place, again, it's February 1st. It's on the Thursday, and it should be fun. Should be fun, and all the best to the PWHL for that. And we'll see how all those star players do in their games. The PWHL, again, as I mentioned in news video yesterday, doing pretty well when it comes to attendance, so I'll be interested to see how much excitement there is around these players in Toronto when that date, February the 1st, arrives. I did want to mention this in the News of the Day video, too, that Justin Williams was inducted into Carolina's Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure I mentioned him going into the Hall of Fame before the season started. But Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, it's interesting because the broadcast that I watched was the LA broadcast, and they talked about Williams and his Hall of Fame credentials and how he was never a superstar player. He was never a points leader. He was never a guy who dazzled with all of his creativity on the ice. But he was a very good player, and he was clutch. He was clutch, and in big games, he was the guy. And he was the one that you would turn to for leadership in key situations. It almost feels like maybe with the Hall of Fame, there needs to be a new sort of designation. But again, it is the Hall of Fame. When you start talking about putting guys in who haven't necessarily dominated the league, that's where people get upset and say, oh, it's not the Hall of Very Good, it's the Hall of Fame. So for Williams, I think him being inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Canes, I'd like to see LA do the same, to be honest. I thought it was great that he was wearing his Stanley Cup rings from LA and from Carolina. I thought that was great. And so all the best to Justin Williams. Seems like a really nice guy. So Sam Reinhart set an NHL record. This is an interesting one. Sets an all-time record in the National Hockey League for special team goals. 7th straight game that he had a special teams goal. Over that time, he's had 6 power play markers and 1 shorthanded goal. So he's the first player in NHL history. I don't know where they track all these stats. These are amazingly obscure stats. But I love that. I think that's great. That's the kind of thing that I would love to spreadsheet out and track and all that. So Sam Reinhart, who's having a career year, and it is a contract year, he's going to get paid this summer. And how much he's going to get paid by the Panthers or wherever he ends up, we'll see. I think it's in the Panthers' best interest to keep him, and I think it's in his best interest to stay in Florida. But things can get really unpredictable the closer we get to July the 1st. With their win tonight, the Philadelphia Flyers, I felt, should be mentioned here too. Both Pennsylvania teams are currently in the playoffs, at least above the playoff line. Pittsburgh, I believe the number 1 wild card with tonight's results. No, they're right below the line. Pittsburgh's the first team below the playoff line. Philadelphia is in the playoffs, though, and with their recovery from their slump, they're now second. They're second in the division. They're now 1 point ahead of Carolina, and they're only 2 points behind the New York Rangers. They've played more games than Carolina or the Rangers, but still, looking at what we expected from Philadelphia this season and what we've got from Philadelphia, quite the different story, and it is hard to argue against John Tortorella for Coach of the Year right now. I'm just saying, I know there's other coaches having a remarkable run right now. I know what Tocchet's doing in Vancouver, and I get why he'd likely be the favorite, but Philadelphia wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the playoffs, and they outwork their opponents most nights, and I think that speaks to the identity that the coach has given them, and good on Tortorella for that. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think Philadelphia stays in the hunt now and they're back, or do you think that slump they were in, that they could return to that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.